You open your eyes in front of an ordinary bathroom mirror. But today, instead of your face, the glass starts projecting scenes from your own life. The same overdue bill, the same message left on read, the same feeling of always arriving just a little too late for everything. Outside, on the same street, two people with similar stories walk in opposite directions. One seems to pass through doors that open on their own. The other keeps bumping into invisible walls. What if it's not luck? What if it's not karma, technique, or lack of connections? What if there is an invisible mirror, not hanging on the wall, but installed inside your consciousness, reflecting with precision who you believe you are when no one is watching? What kind of world have you been creating without noticing? In this video, I'm going to guide you through a corridor of hermetic mirrors. Once you understand the principle that governs these reflections, you will never look at your reality the same way again. Two neighbors look at the same city through the same window, but one sees opportunities rising like lights at dawn, and the other sees only shadows repeating themselves without mercy. The scene looks ordinary, until you realize it's not the world that changes, but the gaze that silently interprets it. Like an old dusty mirror, every belief distorts the landscape and warps the future that could exist. A discomfort starts pulsing. What if what you call reality is only the surface of something operating much deeper? This is where the law of correspondence appears as the first key. As within, so without. As above, so below. The Kybalion. If the reflection out there keeps repeating pain, where are those images really coming from? What have you been allowing the mirror to reveal without ever questioning it? Niels Bohr, when exploring the role of the observer in quantum physics, showed that there is no neutral experience. The act of observing alters what is observed. We're not talking here about magically conjuring miracles, but about recognizing that perception and reality are not separated by a solid wall. In depth psychology, Carl Jung described core beliefs as lenses that organize the world without the ego realizing it. It's the inner map that colors the territory, not the other way around. That's why two different gazes generate two different worlds, even while walking on the same sidewalk. Reality behaves like an obedient mirror, never a moral judge. It doesn't punish or reward you. It responds, and the response is always a match to the inner state that generated it. Imagine carrying a house of mirrors with you, like the ones in old amusement parks. Each trauma is a curved mirror, each belief a cracked pane, each memory a surface that throws back a distorted image. And without noticing, you judge the reflection as if it were absolute truth. But what if the reflection is only showing what already exists inside, patiently waiting to be seen? Psychology calls this your inner narrative, the silent story you tell about yourself. Nothing external escapes the filter of that narrative. The mirror simply returns the coherence of what you sustain within. And that is far more unsettling than any superstition about luck. Modern physics, when it speaks of the role of the observer, doesn't say you create everything alone, but that you participate in how the experience organizes itself. Attention is the touch that collapses possibilities, choosing what takes shape in your perceptual field. The mirror principle works in a similar way. What you believe yourself to be, even secretly, gets projected outward and comes back to you as confirmation. This cycle is so subtle that almost no one realizes they're trapped inside it. That's why a person can live an entire life on a stage they never consciously chose and still call that stage reality. But what if it isn't? The repeated pattern of difficulties doesn't indicate a sentence. It reveals a misaligned inner image. The outer mirror exposes flaws that aren't in matter itself, but in the invisible mold that organizes it. Jung would call this the shadow, rejected parts that continue acting behind the scenes. Bohr would call it interference, inner patterns that change the outcome you observe. Hermeticism simply calls it correspondence. What appears out there is always the child of what vibrates within. And if the world keeps replaying old stories, maybe it's just replaying you. Do you have the courage to ask which version of yourself is being projected right now? The small daily frustrations, scarcity, delays, conflicts, closed doors are not isolated events. They are reflections, images sent back so you can see what you still haven't dared to transform. There is no punishment in life, only echo. And the echo exposes the tone of the voice you use to narrate who you think you are. If the echo hurts, it's the image that needs adjustment, not the mirror. So what exactly have you been sending to this invisible mirror? And how much longer are you going to confuse reflection with identity? The discomfort becomes inevitable when you realize that maybe you have never lived in the real world, but in internal versions that turned into habit. The ground you call life may be more inside of you than outside. And that means the exit door has always been where you never looked, at the center of your own consciousness. When the reflection bothers you, that's the call. When repetition suffocates you, that's the password. When everything looks the same, that's the alarm. The mirror doesn't move first, you move. And now, in front of this first revelation, questions appear that open the initiatory corridor. What inner image has been silently ruling your days? Which old beliefs are still holding the brush that paints your reality? What reflection do you keep accepting as inevitable? And who would you become if you dared to clean the mirror and face the truth behind it? Before we move on, and if this journey has already lit something inside you, like this video and subscribe. When you do that, you teach the algorithm itself to reflect more content like this into your digital reality, co-creating the path you chose to walk. The image opens as if we were inside an old film projector. The reel spins, scratched and worn, carrying scenes no one else sees, memories, fears, narratives you've never admitted out loud. Reality out there is just the white screen. The world you live in is not the street, but the real you carry inside. With every recurring thought, with every emotion that repeats, a new frame is fixed onto the surface of the real. That's the moment when the principle of mentalism whispers its law. The universe is entirely mental, the Kybalion. If everything is mind, the mirror doesn't reflect the world. It reflects the mental structure you project. Which reel has been playing without your awareness? Werner Heisenberg showed that there is no observation without influence. The observer participates in the formation of the measured reality, not as an absolute creator, but as an essential part of the process. Contemporary physics doesn't say you attract everything all the time, but reveals that your presence alters what can manifest within your perceptual field. This echoes in depth psychology. Carl Jung described the unconscious as the silent scriptwriter of life, constantly reinforcing internal patterns. The Hermetic mirror works the same way, always confirming the script you have agreed to call your life. That's why reality can feel stubbornly coherent. Who you believe yourself to be is exactly who the world insists on showing back to you. And what if that coherence isn't fate at all, but only a mirror? Your deepest identity is not your biography or your social persona. It's the intimate, secret, almost whispered answer to the question, who am I when no one is watching? That answer shapes everything. It decides the vibration you hold each day. Hope or cynicism, expansion or defense, trust or fear. Vibration is not some random mystical energy. It's the emotional and cognitive pattern your body knows best, and the mirror returns exactly that. Not what you want, but what you believe is possible. Not what you say, but what you sustain. What identity is vibrating in you right now, even when your conscious mind tries to deny it? Imagine a tuning fork being struck in the silence of a temple. It vibrates, and nearby objects begin to resonate with it, with no choice of their own. Your inner vibration works the same way. Recurring thoughts, predominant emotions, automatic narratives begin to pull in experiences that match. Not because the universe is obeying you, but because you only notice and only respond to what matches your internal tone. Jung would call this a symbolic confirmation system. Hermeticism calls it the principle of vibration. You call it destiny. But maybe destiny is just frequency. What note have you been emitting without noticing? The mirror is neutral. It doesn't judge whether you think you're capable or incapable. It simply returns the evidence that corresponds to that belief. If inside there is a script of defeat, the mirror will bring back proof that confirms defeat. If inside there is a narrative of eternal struggle, the mirror will keep delivering conflicts, renewing themselves like waves on the sea. You are not attracting suffering on purpose. You're projecting the only story the mirror has been authorized to reflect. And even when life tries to show you cracks of light, the old identity brushes them aside. "That's not for me," says the echo. How many opportunities have you never even seen because your inner mirror had already decided they were impossible? Your worldview is the second pillar of mirror engineering. It colors everything your eyes encounter. If you believe the world is hostile, you will see threats. If you believe you have to fight for everything, you will live in a state of warfare. Worldview is the background canvas of your vibration, and because the principle of correspondence operates flawlessly, everything aligned with that background will appear as reality. As within, so without. The Kybalion. If your life keeps repeating the same storyline, maybe it's not bad luck. It's correspondence. What you see in the mirror was painted first in the invisible. The Hermetic mirror can be a prison or a portal. A prison when identity is inherited, automatic, unconscious. A portal when identity is chosen, refined, and cultivated like an inner work of art. Physics calls this the collapse of possibility. Psychology calls it narrative reconfiguration. Hermeticism calls it mental transmutation. The name doesn't matter. What matters is the courage to change what you project. Because the mirror never goes first, it only answers. Now the question finds you like a silent blade. If your outer reality is the reflection, who is holding the inner brush? What belief do you keep feeding that continues to shape your experiences? If the mirror is neutral, why do you keep fighting with it instead of changing the image you feed it? And who would you be willing to become if you discovered that this mirror can be reprogrammed from within? The alchemical forge lights up in the dark, a glowing crucible where the old self begins to melt like metal surrendered to fire. The old forms twist, resist, scream not to disappear, but you can feel something new wanting to be born. In this symbolic heat, the principle of mentalism acts like an invisible hammer. The universe is entirely mental, the Kybalion. If everything is mind, identity is not fate. It is a choice repeated until it becomes nature. The outer mirror is only waiting for the new shape to reproduce it, and the world that once seemed solid begins to reveal its cracks. Which part of you is ready to dissolve? Albert Einstein, when exploring relativity, showed that the observer and their movement alter the measure of time and space. There is no fixed backdrop, no immutable stage. Reality dances according to the perspective you occupy. Joseph Campbell, in his studies of the hero's journey, revealed that every transformation begins with the symbolic death of the previous self. The call to assume a new inner name is the true beginning of the journey. Hermeticism has always known this. Identity is cause, reality is effect. When the being changes, the mirror rearranges the world. What role have you been playing in your own story? Most people project by accident. They project old traumas as if they were eternal truths. They project family defeats as if they were inevitable inheritances. They project fears as if they were compasses. But unconscious projection doesn't create a new future. It repeats an old past. The first initiatory movement is to break this automatic cycle. It is to ask, silently and bravely, who do I decide to be now? And to allow the inner fire to burn away what no longer serves. Conscious projection is not about imagining results. It is about defining identity. It is replacing, what do I want to have, with, who do I need to be for that to exist? The focus moves away from the reflection and returns to the source. Hermeticism calls this mental transmutation. Psychology calls it updating the self. Symbolic physics would call it changing the wave function. The label doesn't matter. The force of the decision does. Have you ever dared to define who you are before the mirror confirms it? Now imagine an actor receiving a sacred role. They can't just memorize lines. They need to embody the character in their breathing, their body, their gestures. In the same way, the new identity cannot be just a pretty sentence on paper. It has to enter the blood of your small, everyday choices. How does this version of you act? How do they react? What do they keep standing for when no one is watching? Joseph Campbell would say that myth lives in daily practice, not in theory. The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. The Kybalion. Have you truly listened, or only wished? The initiatory exercise is simple and profound. Who do I need to become so that reality can reorganize itself? It's not about results. It's about inner coherence. The new identity must be treated like a seal, a sigil, a secret name, an operative mantra, not just a motivational phrase. You repeat it not to convince the universe, but to reorganize your vibration. Because the mirror only recognizes what you consistently sustain. What inner name have you been using without noticing? Assuming the new identity is not a one-time act, it is a ritual of repetition. It is choosing the future version of yourself in each micro-decision of the present. Neuroplasticity responds to this like soft clay. The mirror responds by offering new paths, encounters, and signs. But the command always comes from within. Conscious projection inaugurates a new timeline. The world bends when you bend first. What are you willing to embody today? And now the blade returns to you. What old identity are you still protecting as if it were your essence? Who would you be if you dared to release that story? What reflection would appear if you became, now, the version you've been postponing for years? And what reality would begin to form if, for the first time, the mirror received an image that is truly yours? The garden appears in front of you as a silent territory. The dark soil rests, still and motionless, hiding what is already germinating. There are no signs, no leaves, no visible evidence, only the invisible working in secret. This is how the new identity is born in the world. Beneath the surface. The mirror shows nothing, yet. But Hermeticism has always warned. Inner causes need time to generate outer effects. That which is above is like that which is below. The Kybalion. What you planted inside has already begun to grow, even if the reflection is still telling the old story. Erwin Schrödinger showed that complex systems change state gradually until they reach a critical point where a new form appears. Nothing happens out of nowhere. Reality accumulates coherence before revealing itself. Viktor Frankl, studying spiritual dignity under extreme conditions, taught that whoever sustains an inner sense of meaning radically changes their outer experience. The gardener's patience is exactly that. holding inner coherence before the world validates it. Hermeticism calls this cause and effect. Psychology calls it meaning orientation. Life calls it maturation. Have you been sustaining your chosen being, or giving up before it blooms? The common mistake is to dig the seed up at the first moment of silence from the soil, to check anxiously every day if it has worked yet, to run back to the old identity because reality hasn't changed fast enough. This breaks the field, interrupts the cycle, fractures the vibration. The reflection always shows the past. The mirror returns yesterday's identity. If you abandon the self you chose because of an old reflection, you replant the same story. That's how entire lives spin in circles. For how many years have you been replanting the same seeds? The gardener's patience is an initiatory virtue. It means staying loyal to the identity you chose, even when the world stays silent. It means trusting what works underground. It means remembering that vibration is not desire, it is consistency. Symbolic physics would call this the time it takes for the field to reorganize. Frankl would call it fidelity to meaning. Hermeticism would call it the ripening of the cause. Can you sustain who you chose to be without demanding instant confirmation from the world? Now imagine a magnifying glass concentrating sunlight until it becomes fire. Focused attention is that magnifying glass. Light on its own doesn't create combustion. It's concentration that transmutes. In the same way, scattered thoughts do not create vibrational coherence. The mirror responds to what you repeat, to what you feed, to what you contemplate. That's why your inner language must change, from "I don't want this anymore" to "I am becoming that." The focus shifts from running away to moving toward. What have you been amplifying with your attention? The mind can be trained. New patterns develop like muscles that didn't exist before. Your nervous system responds to the ritual of conscious repetition. Schrödinger suggested that coherence is what allows living structures to resist chaos. Likewise, your new identity will only solidify if there is coherence between what you think, what you feel, and how you act. The magnifying glass has to stay pointed at the same spot. If you change the focus every day, there is no fire, no form, no transmutation. Where has your magnifying glass been pointing without you realizing? The Hermetic mirror is not magic, it is precise. It only returns what has remained stable inside you for long enough. Patience gives you roots. Focus gives you form. Continuous vibration crystallizes results. But few have the courage to remain in the invisible phase, where nothing seems to be happening. That's where masters are forged, and the anxious give up. Have you been romanticizing change, or cultivating the silent discipline that makes it inevitable? And now, questions that open the next doorway. How much of your life has been cut short by impatience? Which inner seeds do you abandon before they sprout? What fire could you ignite if your attention stopped wandering? And what reality would appear if you sustained the invisible until it finally became reflection? The loop reveals itself as a golden gear spinning at the center of a hall of infinite mirrors. Each reflection repeats the previous one. Same story, same reaction, same ending. This is the reverse cycle, where current reality defines identity, and the old identity projects the same reality again. It's a daily enchantment that imprisons without chains. You look at the reflection and believe it tells you who you are. The image thrown back reinforces the belief. The belief projects the next experience, and the mirror closes the circle. Richard Feynman, when exploring all the possible paths of particles, showed that the world doesn't follow a single line. It follows probabilities that collapse according to choices and observations. Depth psychology, with Carl Jung, says something similar when it describes confirmation bias. The psyche selects, among infinite stimuli, only those that confirm the inner myth. Hermeticism lays out the principle of cause and effect, reminding us that every visible effect begins as an invisible cause. Effect always follows cause, the Kybalion. In the reverse cycle, the inner cause never truly changes, it only repeats itself. How many times have you confused probability with destiny? Negative enchantment begins when you look at life through the lens of the old identity. You see scarcity and confirm that life is hard. You see rejection and conclude you're not worthy. You see closed doors and declare you weren't born for this. Reality just performs the script you wrote, without realizing it. Life doesn't contradict you because the mirror does not argue. It simply agrees. And constant agreement traps you in a film you dislike but keep narrating. The initiatory cycle begins when you break this automatic mechanism. First, you choose the future identity and project that image, even without immediate signs. Then, you learn to ignore part of the conflicting evidence, not out of denial, but out of hierarchy. Your new cause is worth more than the old effect. The mirror delays, but it responds. And it responds with precision. Small signals begin to appear. An unexpected conversation, an unlikely coincidence, an invitation that wouldn't have arrived before. Jung would call this synchronicity. Hermeticism would call it correspondence in motion. Have you been recognizing these signs, or dismissing them because they don't match your old story? Synchronicities are like cracks in the wall of the reverse cycle. They announce that something inside has finally changed. Tiny, subtle, almost shy, but real. If you celebrate them, you strengthen the new identity. If you ignore them, you feed the old one. The mirror responds to what you validate. That's why a simple ritual can transform destinies. Writing down every day the signs of your new reality. Each note is like sharpening the blade of your consciousness. Have you been honoring the birth of the new, or demanding dramatic proof before you allow yourself to believe? See yourself now as a director in an editing room. You hold a ceremonial pair of scissors in your hands. On one side, reels containing old scenes, marked by fear, repetition, and doubt. On the other, raw, unseen footage, waiting for your intention to shape it. A wise director doesn't react to the film that's already finished. They create the next one. This is how a master of the mirror operates. They don't fight the current reflection. They consciously craft the next. What inner scenes are you still keeping in the cut, even though you know they no longer represent you? In the temple of mirrors, two of them face each other. One shows a crystallized past, the other, a reality in gestation. The ordinary seeker chooses the first because it confirms who they've always been. The initiate chooses the second because it confirms who they are becoming. The difference is subtle and absolute. The past demands repetition. The future demands courage. The mirror does not choose for you. It only reflects your choice. The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. The Kybalion. Are you listening to the call of the second mirror? And now, quietly, questions that cut the cycle at the root. What part of your life is still commanded by the old reflection? Which synchronicities have you been ignoring out of loyalty to your old story? What new reality would appear if you validated the subtle instead of the obvious? And who would you become if you finally chose to be the cause and not the effect of your own existence? The mirror returns to the center of the scene, silent, without glow, simply waiting for the image you decide to offer it. Now, after walking this entire path, something becomes clear. Reality was never your enemy, never random. never chaotic. It has always been a reflection, a precise reflection of the identity you sustain, the thoughts you feed, the emotions you repeat, and the inner story you choose to honor. Life doesn't change when you try to push the reflection with your hands. It changes when you alter the figure the mirror receives. And when you understand this, something realigns inside the seeker. The outer world stops being a tyrant and becomes a messenger. The mirror stops being a prison and becomes an ally. The four movements now reveal themselves as a single initiatory path. Conscious projection, where you choose who you are. The gardener's patience, where you sustain what you chose. Focused attention, where you align your mind with your destiny. The creative cycle, where reality finally responds to your new vibration. These are not techniques, they are inner rights. And each one returns power to its proper place, the center of your consciousness. When the being changes, the reflection changes. When identity reorganizes itself, the world rearranges the pieces around it. The life you live today is not a sentence, it is a mirror. Here arises the insight that follows the initiate beyond this video. If the reflection has already changed once, when you were wounded, tired, or distracted, it can change again, now in a conscious, lucid, and responsible way. You are not the image the mirror returns. You are the artist who draws that image from within. The mirror only obeys. The real question is not, what is life giving me? But what identity am I feeding so that life reflects it? This is the question that opens doors, rearranges paths, and calls new timelines into being. And it cannot be answered someday. It asks to be answered today. So receive this initiatory invitation. Before you sleep and when you wake, spend 1 minute in front of a mirror, physical or symbolic, and ask yourself with radical honesty, which identity do I choose to sustain today? Don't look for immediate results. Look for coherence. This small daily ritual retrains your vibration, aligns your focus, strengthens your new story, and begins to collapse probabilities that match it. It is practice, discipline, silent alchemy. The link is in the pinned comment. It's not just a purchase, it's a pact with your own expansion. If this knowledge found you at the right moment, like this video and subscribe. That action is not only digital, it is symbolic. Each click teaches the algorithm and your own psyche to bring you more content that expands consciousness. By liking, you reinforce inside yourself the choice for this path. By subscribing, you declare to yourself, I want to keep studying the laws that shape my reality. Share this video with someone who needs to walk through the same portal. A single share can break entire cycles. And to dive even deeper, the Key to Prosperity ebook are available in the pinned comment, both with a symbolic cost compared to the transformation they offer. They are for those who decided to go beyond inspiration and enter the daily Hermetic practice. And remember, this video is part of a larger journey. The next encounter reveals layers that complete the mirror principle and expand what has begun to awaken in you today. To follow that continuity is like walking from mirror to mirror until you find the center of your own consciousness. Until our next initiatory meeting on the path of Hermetic wisdom,